Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katie. And thanks everybody for joining today and taking some time out of your evening to learn more about SalmonSafe. So as Katie said, my name is Andrea. I'm the program coordinator of SalmonSafe, and I'm joined by Brian, who's our certification specialist from across the border on our US team to help share about the program and potentially answer some of the questions that you folks may have. Before I dive in, also, I would like to recognize that I'm talking to you today and working off the lands of unceded and traditional and rightful lands of the Squamish Nation as well. And feel free to share in the chat if you'd like to where you're coming from today. As for SalmonSafe though, SalmonSafe BC is one of Canada's first eco-certification programs that links land management practices with the protection of watersheds. So we also recognize that as long-term stewards of land, farmers really play a key role in helping restore native salmon fisheries and in maintaining healthy watersheds more broadly. So this is particularly important as we witness the ongoing and anticipated impacts of climate change that I'm sure everyone is very familiar with, especially over 2021. SalmonSafe certified producers provide a vision for voluntary adoption of resilience building practices that can really keep streams healthy enough for salmon. And because, as we know, salmon are indicator species, we know that if salmon are thriving, then the watershed overall has the potential to thrive too. So SalmonSafe is comprised of our BC-based team as well as our US-based team. So the BC team is made up of Teresa Fresco, our program manager, and myself, Andrea McDonald, our program coordinator. As well, our US team is made up of Brian, who's here today, Anna Huddle, our certification director, as well as Dan Kent, our co-founder and executive director. SalmonSafe is one of many programs that's hosted under the Fraser Basin Council, and SalmonSafe was actually launched in British Columbia back in 2011 under the leadership of the Pacific Salmon Foundation in partnership with the Fraser Basin Council. But in 2018, SalmonSafe BC was fully transitioned over to the Fraser Basin Council and has been hosted solely under FBC since then. So Fraser Basin Council, or FBC, is a non-governmental nonprofit organization that promotes sustainability across British Columbia with the primary goal to enhance, as it says on the screen, social well-being supported by a vibrant economy, sustained by a healthy environment. A little history, very, very brief history of the program. It was actually founded by the Pacific Rivers Council back in the mid-1990s in Oregon, and the program has now been expanded across the Pacific Northwest and is active all the way from mid-BC all the way down to California. And SalmonSafe BC has actually certified over 30 farms, ranches, and vineyards in BC since the launch of the program back in 2011. We also have a number of certification programs that certify urban developments, corporate headquarters, vineyards, neighborhood parks, university campuses, things like bridges, farms, which are applicable to you folks, and most recently, designer firms that incorporate SalmonSafe practices across their practices. And now that I've kind of given the background context for what SalmonSafe BC is more particularly, I'm going to hand it off to Brian, who's going to walk us through some of the standards, as well as the general overview of the assessment process for new farmers who are looking to join the program.
Right on. Well, thank you for that. And again, I'm Brian with SalmonSafe, based down here in Seattle on unceded Duwamish, Still-Squamish, and Coast Salish territory. And yeah, I'm very excited to connect with folks tonight. And Andrea gave a great explanation of kind of where SalmonSafe started and what our kind of core goals are. But more pertaining to the ag side of SalmonSafe, that is what I do. I run our certification for our ag program down here in the States. So yeah, I can go ahead and give you a rundown on when we do work with growers in the ag world, what we assess their operations on from a SalmonSafe perspective. So we have 7 points of focus within our SalmonSafe standards. And those are on the screen. You can see them: Instream Habitat protection and restoration, riparian and wetland vegetation protection, water use management, erosion prevention and sediment control, integrated pest management and water quality protection, animal management, and landscape level biodiversity enhancement. So I'll get into those in a little bit more detail later on, and I believe we'll have questions totally time for questions at the end, so don't feel like you need to. If you have a burning question, feel free to save it to the end because we'll have plenty of time for it. So next slide, please. Just going into details a little bit more on these conditions and points in our standards. On the in-stream habitat protection, we do assess property on stream channels and what their habitat is for salmon, other naturally stabilized stream banks. And as you can tell, like I said, it's really looking at how these habitats can protect water quality. As you know, if you stabilize a riparian buffer, that really helps towards protecting all of the runoff and sediment of land and other things into the water system. So next slide. Yeah, and a bit more on that. We assess if riparian habitat is in good shape. As this picture indicates, canopy cover, I imagine there's some great canopy cover above where this picture is taken. Plenty of leaf litter as well in this particular photo. And I did mention stream bank stability a little bit, but this would be the point of our standards where we look a little bit further into that. And then if there are wetlands on a property, to make sure that they are protected by buffers, whether they be, filter strips of grass or whether they be, other types of shrubs that help to stabilize and really to sequester some of those sediment runoffs. Next, sorry. I was expecting it to magically go to the next slide. Apologies. The next condition that we look for in our standards is water use management. This is a pretty integral part to our standards, as all of them are, but especially as water usage, as we get into some of the 21st century with some of the outlooks, it'll definitely be a key to really focus on. And within our standards, we look to see what irrigation practices the farm is enacting, basically to make sure that those impacts to the salmon are being kept in mind. So minimizing water loss, whether that be drip irrigation or other types of timed irrigation that maximizes the time in which the water is absorbed in the soil, loss to heat is avoided. Fish screens are also something we are pretty keyed into. We, especially with irrigation, with ag land, that is definitely a point of emphasis to ensure that the fish are staying in the places that they're supposed to be and not getting lost into an irrigation canal. And diversions done when salmon are not present, of course. That's also looked into in our assessment process. And then, yeah, water application specific considerations of crop requirements and crop rotation are also assessed as well, seeing those impacts. Next. Okay, erosion and prevention and sediment control. The soil, we look at how the soil is protected from erosion, like I did allude to a little bit earlier with some of those being buffer zones and the likes. But that can also extend into like roads and that sort of thing. Like if you have like a loose gravel road or things like that, we really try to, assess for that and try to mitigate if that's, closer to the river and what other techniques you can use. Yeah, and some of those best management practices I've kind of already alluded to, like the filter strips. But bioswales are a big one too. That's just a really great method to kind of avoid runoff and try to guide runoff and stormwater into the adequate channels and not have it pick up too many other nasty chemicals and the likes and route into the watershed. So next. It's my favorite slide because this mouse I find absolutely adorable. Integrated pest management is a big one for us. SalmonSafe actually maintains a high hazard chemistry list within our standards. Pesticides, fungicides, insecticides, and herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides that are all pesticides, I should say. And so, yeah, so we maintain this list, and all of those chemistries on that list have been reviewed by our technical advisors of PhDs and other academics that are mainly out of our Washington State University outpost or Oregon State University extension, and have all been found to be acutely toxic to fish. So if a farm, for example, is using a chemistry within their farm management that is on that list, within our certification, they would have the ability over a 3-year cycle, because our assessment is over a 3-year period. They would have the ability to, over that 3-year period, find a better solution and alternative to that chemistry. And that we find that's a fairly flexible way of doing it. Definitely helps to not be so rigid in that, and certainly allows for farmers to still run their day-to-day operations and not have to worry about the potential of losing their certification immediately. And yeah, and I guess I should also mention within that, material and waste storage and handling are also included in that assessment too. So not only are those chemistries, like what are you using, and how are you storing other pesticides as well. So next. And then if this is applicable, of course, not everyone has livestock or other animals that they have on their operation, but we do assess on farms on if livestock are managed to avoid excessive soil compaction, erosion, and loss of vegetation. So basically, if these livestock are being rotated to mitigate that within the property, fencing and water gaps and dense vegetation and other methods to prevent livestock access to bodies of water for aquatic life. This one pretty self-explanatory. As you can imagine, the more time that some of these larger livestock spend around water, that have direct access to water, like a river, it's not great from a water quality perspective. And we also assess on waste management. So if you do have livestock, how is that waste being stored? How is it being converted to fertilizer or being sold to fertilizer and managed in the most safe way for the watershed? So yeah, and actually I know that we have a couple farms that have been actually experimenting with wildlife friendly fencing. That's been a new emerging science, with kind of opening up some wildlife corridors for some larger game, like elk and things like that some of this new fencing allows, like for them to safely travel over and jump over without getting caught on barbed wire. So it's very interesting, as I'm also very intrigued to see where that goes, because I think that's a really beneficial way of mitigating the loss of migration of larger wildlife. Next. And then landscape level biodiversity is our last point. And it essentially means that you're also looking at the kind of the whole picture of your farm, because that is what we assess on. We don't just assess like a plot of, carrots within a larger operation, or an acre of whatever other crop, potato, and surrounded by wheat. It's the entire farm. So that's where we really like we assess farms, and we really like to see that there are farm practices that are implemented to maintain habitat and bolstering things like biodiversity. We have a 5% biodiversity condition within our standards. So basically that just means that 5% of the property has to be set aside for pollinator habitat and other things like that maintain wild spaces. So yeah, next. And just as I have gone over our assessment process, it's probably good for you guys to keep in mind of what that would mean from the grower perspective and what would we need in order to get that started. So we would conduct just a meeting, or whatever that outreach would be. It's 95% of the time going to be Andrea for you folks. So we'd have that initial contact, and then we'd prepare a baseline amount of information, and mostly that isn't a ton of information. In fact, that is, let me just pull up exactly, actually I think that might be later on in the slide deck exactly what that will be. But from that baseline information that we get, which will be farm maps and some estimated water usage throughout the year, and also which pesticides you've been using at the minimum of 12-month span. So that's most of the information that we'll gather from you in order to conduct the assessment. And then we'll actually do the assessment on site. And then we will have that assessment written up and then analyze it internally. And then we will grant certification as certified or conditionally certified. And essentially what that means is if there is something that needs to be done, say there needs to have that 5% biodiversity clause met, or you need to phase out a high hazard chemistry, that's where you would be conditionally certified. You'll still be within the SalmonSafe program. So for the outward facing, we are SalmonSafe. We can market our produce or whatever we're producing on our land is SalmonSafe. You would still be SalmonSafe, but you would just have that 3-year period or whatever it is agreed upon. Like if it's a high hazard chemistry, we generally like to give like a 1 or 2 year phasing it out into a different under the IPM strategy to softer chemistry or no chemistry. But on the outside, you'd still be SalmonSafe. So, and then we'd also work, as Andrea will go into a little bit more detail on publicity and recognition, and then also bringing market value to your certification. As you'll see in this logo, this fish like a drink as well, as part of our Drink Like a Fish campaign that we've been doing with hops, with our hop growers and our barley growers, which we've been connecting them to breweries both in Canada and in the United States to source sustainably grown hops and malt. And so we've been finding some great traction there from a market value. And seems that customers are very excited to drink conservation forward beer, which is always fun to have a reason to drink, I assume. So and then I guess just harping back a little bit to the assessment, if, for example, you are conditionally certified, we will check in on those certifications within that calendar year, the annual review of project activities. So yeah, next. So, okay, I knew this was in the slide deck somewhere, the certification document. So there's the map of the property, pest management information, that's that minimum of 12-month pesticide use record, irrigation management information that can include water rights, and again, an estimation of how much water is used. And then also things like if you use drip irrigation or not, just all of those details. And then if fish screens as well, that'd be great if that is a document that you have. And then any past habitat restoration or soil stabilization, that you have done in the past or that you currently are planning to do, we'd love to see that. And then a description of the other restoration activities, as well as current animal water use management if you have livestock.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will take it back over to provide a couple of local examples, and by local, I mean local to British Columbia. We have lots of great champions. I'm only going to cover 2 just for the sake of time, 2 of our newer ones as well. So Persephone Brewing Company, which I hope some of you have had the chance to either go there physically because it's a great site, or taste some of their beverages perhaps. I love them, they're great. It's actually one of our newest SalmonSafe certified agriculture sites, which is very exciting. They're also a certified B Corp and have amazing sustainable practices. They're really heavily involved in regenerative agriculture practices as well. Their owner is actually part of a larger organization internationally that promotes regenerative agriculture as well. They also pride themselves in showcasing the possibilities of increasing profits without compromising the environment, but instead finding ways to enhance it. And they've been quite successful in doing so. And that's why they are also one of our SalmonSafe certified sites, because they heavily practice that. They're certified actually last year, and we've just recently celebrated them as well. Tantalus Vineyards is another great champion located in Kelowna, BC. They were certified back in 2019, actually, and they're practicing efficient irrigation measures. They've put in some bat houses to enhance habitat, which is really awesome. They also reuse and treat wastewater on site and promote biological treatment of water through things like Brian was talking about, through bioswales or rain gardens, that sort of thing, through the soils and green spaces. Yeah, and then there are also many, many more examples of our lovely producers all across the province, ranging from small vegetable producers to large vineyards that we have all through wine country, and small scale dairy farms as well. We actually have at this time roughly 12 certified vineyards and roughly 20 certified farms across BC that we'd love for you to obviously be a part of. we also, I want to, before I move into the how to get involved in this, just want to talk a little bit more about the promotion, material, and marketing. So besides the, environmental benefits of being part of the SalmonSafe program, there's many other mutual benefits to the producers as well. So we have lots of features on our social media where we have lots of followers as well, and that can be shared across into the United States through our US partners. We also have our website, which promotes all of our SalmonSafe products. And as Brian talked about earlier, it's definitely a growing trend, and people, I know myself because I'm environmentally minded, but it's always nice to know that what you're either consuming or drinking, whatever form it may be, that it comes from a sustainable conservation-based organization, and that can be in the form of a farm as well. So we recognize that you folks are already doing probably phenomenal work, and you may as well get recognized for it, of course, and getting SalmonSafe certified can allow that to happen and be promoted via our various networks as well. So if you're interested, of course, I've linked our general email, which is salmonsafe@fraserbasin.bc.ca, which will be forwarded to myself and Teresa, but also you can email me directly at McDonald@fraserbasin.ca. As well, you can follow us on social media. So we have Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and that's SalmonSafe BC. And then we also have our Fraser Basin Council YouTube, where we have an entire playlist dedicated to the various webinars. We also have an agriculture webinar that was much longer that showcased a lot of our agriculture producers, as well as our agriculture assessor, who goes to the sites and deals with them more intimately. And they provide a really great overview of the program as well as their experiences. And before we finish off and take some questions, of course, I wanted to take a moment to thank our funders and supporters from the Real Estate Foundation, Metro Vancouver, and the Fraser Basin Council as well. So that concludes kind of the overview of the program. I'm sure I hope there's a couple questions, and I can stop sharing my screen so you can see our faces rather than just a screen, and we can get to answering those.
Great, thank you so much. That was really great presentation. That was really informative. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can put it in the chat and I'll read it out. And just while people are, if anyone needs time to type it out or think of a question, I will just mention that I want to say thanks to everyone who joined us today. And if you want to let us know what you thought of this webinar, you will be receiving an email with a webinar feedback form. And so we invite you to fill that out. And Leps would also ask that if anyone is a farm owner, horse owner, or landowner in the Langley or Abbotsford areas, we also have a water quality improvement survey that you'll be sent. And you could fill that out as well. Yeah, so maybe I'll just ask that if people are interested in this certification, but they aren't sure where to start and they aren't sure if they would even qualify, who should they contact?
Me. Yeah, I'm also just gonna write my email in the chat as well. But yes, I am definitely one of the best and most direct lines of communication. If you can reach out to me, we can kind of explore and walk through, as Brian was alluding to, that baseline information, and connect you with our actual agriculture assessor, Rochelle, who's phenomenal, and she can answer lots of the questions that you may have. And I can also be the first kind of screen to answer a lot of those questions as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah.
And I also just wanted to, I thought it was going to be a question, but we have a quiet audience today, and that's totally fine. But I know that there is definitely hesitation, especially from a lot of those folks that have been impacted more recently. I know that farming's very expensive in many cases, and the cost can be a limiting factor. So we definitely work individually with producers as well to find a cost recovery method that works best for them. So not to be completely scared away by the potential costs. It's best to kind of reach out to us, and we can determine what the range of cost that is, because we love to promote our agriculture program, and we'll find mostly kind of any way that we can include you in the process as well.
Great. That's also great to know.
Mm-hmm.
So not sure if anyone else has any questions. But if anyone does have any questions in the future, would they be able to contact you, Andrea?
Definitely. Please reach out. You can contact us via our website, the email I put in the chat there, or you can reach out via social media as well. That also works.
Okay, great. Well, it doesn't seem like anyone has any questions, but hopefully everyone found this really informative. It was a really great presentation. So thank you to our amazing speakers. And I also want to mention that LEPS will be hosting more webinars in the future. There will be some more in March. They don't have dates set, but some of the future topics will be regenerative agriculture and wetland conservation. So keep an eye on our social media and our website calendar for those upcoming webinars. Someone has posted in the chat though, Naila says, thank you, a great intro to this program.
Thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Wow, easy crowd. Really? It's a lot tougher down here. We get the hard-hitting questions. So, but yeah, well, thank you for having me and us on. I really appreciate it, and definitely always gets me excited to know that the work that I'm doing down in the States is also being done up in Canada as well, because fish know no borders. So yeah, just get really excited to connect.
Yeah, great. We really appreciate you taking the time to present for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right. Well, have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.